Hey there, welcome to When Things Change, a podcast where we get to hang out and have conversations on conscious parenting. And our topic of the day is on balancing between talent and academics. And our first guest is Miss Gladys Wahinya, who is the head teacher at Brayside Primary School. And she'll be helping us unpack what that ought to look like when it's done well. Hi, Miss Gladys.
Hi, Charlotte.
I'm so glad you're here with me today.
It's my pleasure to be here.
You know you're my first ever guest, right? So
Thank you.
karibu sana.
Asante, what an honor.
Oh,
That truly is. My first time
uh-huh.
to be on podcast. I'm excited to be
Mm-hmm.
here.
Oh, it's my first time to do it too. So yeah. Miss Gladys, you've been an educator for a while now, right? How
Yes.
long has that been?
This would be my 25th year
Oh,
as a teacher.
wow. Right,
Yes.
right. And what led you into education?
I think I would say partly just a historical aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was born into a family of teachers. My
Mm-hmm.
dad was a teacher, my
Mm-hmm.
mom was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, that made me want to pursue a different career path. Or
Oh.
so I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But when I completed my high school education, I
Mm-hmm.
was called into a course which we call the Bachelor of Education
Mm-hmm.
Science
Mm-hmm.
at a university in Kenya, Egerton University.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would get there, and the first thing I would do is change it.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the dean's office the next day,
Mm-hmm.
and he talked me into seeing the value
Mm-hmm.
of becoming an educator.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of struck a pact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he told me, you go for your first week of learning. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't like it,
Mm-hmm.
come back. We will change it.
Mm-hmm.
Suffice it to say, I got into my first education class.
Mm-hmm.
We were being taught about psychology of children, and I
Mm-hmm.
never went back to the dean. I
Oh,
had basically found where I belonged.
right,
Yeah.
right. And I've heard it said that people think that you're what you do, but it's the reverse. You do what you are. So you could have been a teacher all along, all the years, the exposure with your parents would have been years in training for your purpose. That's why it would be so easy to
ab-
fit into it.
Absolutely. Now, when I
Right.
think about it, yes, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And in regards to our topic of the day, we've met because you are the head teacher to my niece and nephew. That's how we've gotten to know each other.
Yes.
And we've gotten to talk a little bit about kids and helping direct them and the importance of conversation in families. And I want you to help parents out there to understand what it really means to help your child hone their talent without compromising other important aspects of their life. So, what would you say to a parent with a gifted child who's having trouble striking that balance?
All right. That's a very good question, very valid,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this era where we are we are all for promoting
Mm-hmm.
individual talents
Mm-hmm.
and for honing, if it's your abilities and skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, what I would say is one is just to be open to the
Mm-hmm.
fact that children are multi-talented.
Mm-hmm.
So much as, yes, we want the good grades and they're important.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that child who can bring home the grades, let them bring home the grades.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a firm believer that in every child
Mm-hmm.
there's a deposit of something that is unique to that child.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice to any parent would be spend time
Mm-hmm.
just observing your child, spending time with them, talking to them,
Mm-hmm.
talking to the teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and just observing them in their natural environment, whether it's at home.
Mm-hmm.
An example, you might find a child who just wants to hang around the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that that child is interested in knowing more about culinary skills?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that can be honed early?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might find that child you cannot separate them from football,
Mm-hmm.
for example, be it at the estate
Mm-hmm.
or in school.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that that child can be nurtured
Mm-hmm.
to become good in academics, but also a good footballer?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's being very self-aware
Mm-hmm.
of your children,
Mm-hmm.
very aware of what they have and
Mm-hmm.
what they bring to the table.
Right.
Yes.
And that makes me think of how we grew up versus how we're raising our kids now. For us, there was so much emphasis on academics. What our parents knew was, do a science course, do mathematics, become an engineer, a teacher. We're coming from a history where you told your parents you wanted to be an actor, and that conversation didn't go down very well. And now things have changed. Like, what have you seen in your line of work along those lines?
For sure,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a change in
Mm-hmm.
mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I would still say we still have some way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking from probably what I have seen in our nation here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I think that is it's more so because again of in some cases exposure
Mm-hmm.
of parents understanding. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
are they have they seen those actors and actresses who have made an impact?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but one of the things I can acknowledge is we are now changing from, get a good, finish your education,
Mm-hmm.
get a good job,
Mm-hmm.
get employed,
Mm-hmm.
to what is it that you're good at and
Mm-hmm.
give it your very best. And I
Right.
think we are told that if it's, once you find your purpose
Mm-hmm.
and your passion,
Mm-hmm.
then if it's their livelihood, it will follow
Mm-hmm.
because you're able to sacrifice and do what you can do best. And it's
Right.
not a chore. So you're
Right.
happy to wake up and go and do the work that you have
Mm.
chosen. So
Mm.
as such, I would say, yes, we have grown in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I have taught, when I look at the students who've passed through my hands,
Mm-hmm.
some of them are doing remarkably well as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Others, as you've said, they're doing extremely well as artists.
Mm-hmm.
And some are coming back to be teachers.
Right.
So I think it's a matter of what is it
Mm-hmm.
that suits you
Mm-hmm.
and as an individual.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, parents, you hear that? You hear Miss Wahinya? The arts do pay, because I think, our parents, like every parent worries about, or rather, every good parent ought to be concerned about how well their kids will be able to fend for themselves, when they're out there in the great big world. And it can be a concern. And for the longest time, I think in our country, the arts haven't been known to pay as well, but that has changed, right?
It has changed.
And yeah, parents need to be comforted, they need to support their kids, and direct them in the areas of their gifting, like you're talking about purpose. And how do you think purpose intersects with talent?
Good question, and a very deep question.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a question we can dialogue
Mm-hmm.
on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for me that I think where your purpose lies, then also therein lies your talent.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see, if for example, I'm feeling led to doing something, then and I don't have a talent for it,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it could be two ways. I could have a natural talent for it, or I could develop it.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I may have a passion to
Mm-hmm.
sing, but I might be just, a basic singer.
Mm-hmm.
But if I spend time
Mm-hmm.
and, working on that skill,
Mm-hmm.
then it's possible that then I will achieve my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would say also purpose and that idea of passion, but most definitely when purpose and talent meet, then I think it's a winning combination.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I just want to emphasize something you've said to parents: where your talent lies, therein lies your purpose. So
Exactly.
it's important for parents to be mindful of these things. It's important for them to know their children well enough to know when a child is demonstrating a gift in a particular area
Absolutely.
and help shape them along those lines. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as an educator, do you have any such programs to help, call kids forth in the areas of their gifting?
Absolutely. Yes, that would be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I've valued about an international curriculum is that it gives those opportunities. That for us, our aim is to strike a balance between the academics, so to speak, and the areas of talents. And I think also to mention that there are some things that should be a part of the curriculum, not necessarily compartmentalized. Sometimes you cannot compartmentalize a curriculum into that is academic and that is for talent. I'll give an example. Music is a compulsory subject in the school that I work at. And what we do now, every child will go for music lesson, but out of that, as a teacher, I'm on the lookout to identify who has a beautiful singing voice and is interested in singing. I'll keep talking about the interest.
Right.
Because there are some who will be very talented, but it's not the area they want to pursue. And then you might find another child who is extremely good in playing piano. Some will just speak it very naturally, But there's that one who, when given a program, a training program, they catch on quickly. So we have those. I think it's a matter of providing those opportunities. We are looking at our sports, if it's the swimming, if it's, like I said, the different types of sports, if it's your arts, drama productions, giving opportunities for children to be on stage, and just let them be on stage. I mean, if it's a 3-year-old, 5-year-old who can just belt out a song, that's good enough at that level. So you keep nurturing, on the lookout, and being very keen, and sometimes you'll have those that you'll call out, as you mentioned, because somebody is shy. I've seen those. Somebody is extremely shy, will never offer themselves up for a leadership position, for example. But you can see that they have the interpersonal skills that are required. Now, that's a child you call us, you just have a tete-a-tete and say, I really think, Charlotte, if you tried this, I think you can really be good at it. Why don't you give it a go? And let's see. And I'm by your side. You come, let's chat about it. So you will find children putting themselves out, and most importantly is having a safe environment, and knowing, because as we are seeking to pursue our talents and our purpose, we will make mistakes. But does that mean I give up? No. It means, okay, I didn't do that quite well. Do I have a chance to try tomorrow? Or do I have that safe environment where nobody will laugh at me? I'll not be put down, but I can step out and try. Try and try again.
Right.
Exactly.
And we've talked about this before. These conversations are based off of a children's book that I've collaboratively written with a psychologist friend. And the one of the recommendations for parents when handling a gifted child is to allow room for mistakes, and I want you to tell us a bit more about mistakes, because I think that's huge. I think it's it's an amazing opportunity for kids to learn, and just let parents know a little bit why it's so important not to disregard a child in an area because they've made a mistake.
Wow. I mean, again, I don't even know where to find the words to quite explain with the conviction that I have the fact that people who are afraid of making mistakes will never learn. And I mean, I just think of a toddler who is learning to walk. How many times do they stumble and fall? Countless times. But what happens when it's a little one, they're learning to walk? When they fall, you clap for them and you tell them, oh, well done. You give it your best. Stand up, you reach out, literally, you reach out, give them, hold their hand, and help them to stand up and tell them, let's take 2 more steps. I've never heard of a parent who the first time their child was learning to walk, when they fell, they say, never walk again. No, you're actually there supporting them. So I would want our educators and parents to continue in that same line of thought, that learning a new skill is not different than learning to walk, or learning to speak. The first time we said, any child says the first word, they'll use their baby language, and we find it so cute. We'll be so happy. But now here comes this child who's tried their hand at a particular skill and they didn't do well. Why is it any different? It shouldn't be. Ours is to actually say, well done for trying. And I think one of the things, again, education should emphasize is you upload the effort.
Right, true.
Before the excellence comes.
It's
because
true.
once I keep putting effort time and time again, it's a matter of time. The excellence will shine forth. But if you ridicule me at the point of effort, I'll quit.
It's true. It's
And
true.
once, what I've seen with children, if then a child quits in one area and they quit in another area, it becomes habitual. So the safest thing is that I will not try anything. And then as a parent or as a teacher, I'll start asking, how comes Gladys nowadays does not offer herself to do anything? It's because the few times I tried, I was put down. Nobody encouraged me. So why try? I'm safer in my cocoon of safety, so I will not try at all. So it's very, extremely important to give that room. And I think also, let's be honest, do we fail as teachers? Yes, countless times. Do we fail as parents? Yes, countless times. Does that make me stop being a teacher? No. Does it make you stop being from becoming a parent? No. You learn from that and you dust yourself and move on. So it's so, so important.
Right. And you've just said something really fantastic on emphasizing effort more than even the end results effort, because it's in it's there, it's in making the effort to become good at something. That's the journey, and that's where discipline is built. And there's something else someone told me a while back, and that's that all disciplines affect each other, you know. So the discipline that they work up trying to better themselves towards one goal is even transferable into other areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's something like really fantastic that parents need to pay attention to. And there's something else that I really wanted us to talk about, and that's the kind of conflict that arises from pursuing excellence. In my book, I've spoken about, well, the story is about a boy who's really athletic, he's really gifted in basketball, but he tends to take a bias where everything else suffers. Tell us a bit about balance and how a parent with such a gifted child can help them find balance. And first and most importantly, is balance even attainable? Yeah.
All right, good start there. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about balance. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say, yes,
Mm-hmm.
balance is attainable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it comes again with training and support.
Mm-hmm.
Because a child, again, what I've seen with children is
Mm-hmm.
they will easily do that which they love to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so given an example of the boy in your book, a
Mm-hmm.
story that I've quite loved to read,
Mm-hmm.
who loved basketball. So
Mm-hmm.
it was effortless. One, he loved basketball. Two,
Mm-hmm.
second, from the story, he
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed spending time with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So those were two great motivation. So
Right.
obviously, what happens again, most children will focus on that area that is easy for them to do,
Mm-hmm.
because remember, it's not too major a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the reward is instantaneous. I
Right.
love basketball. I've
Mm-hmm.
scored a hoop. You know, I'm spending time with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best thing is also to help them as a parent to understand that, yes, if you're going to keep up your talent, which you love to do, but
Mm-hmm.
also what is the value of education, and
True.
also as educators, how can we make education fun, so
Mm.
that it's not a chore, but it's
Mm-hmm.
something that you're looking forward to actually going to school to do. So I
Right.
think, yes, the balance it's attainable. It's
Mm-hmm.
not natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be taught. It
And
has to be taught.
yeah, and people are busy, you know, even as a parent to a gifted child, for you to be able to afford everything else that goes into helping them hone that talent,
Mm.
you need to work, you've got all these things to do. And how do you encourage parents to help kids with time management? What kind of tools do you recommend for that kind of thing?
All right, that's
Mm,
good. And that the
mm,
good thing with that, it can be a
mhm,
family activity.
mm,
You know, and you're right in the sense that
mm,
it needs to start pretty early. That's the
mhm,
first thing I would say. You
mhm,
know, even if it's a little one who hasn't gone to school, do they
mhm,
have a
mm,
schedule? Do they know
mm,
this is the time for play and this is the corner? This is my corner for playing.
mm,
And after playing, what do I do? I
mhm,
tidy up after myself.
mhm,
Those little duties that begin early
mhm,
will help them also to be able to discipline themselves
mhm,
and know that also there's time for play, there's time for eating.
mhm,
If you're dancing, it's time for dancing. If you're going to
mhm,
church or
mm,
place of worship,
mm,
it's time for place and worship.
mhm,
Because some of these things will be caught
mm,
first
mm,
before
mm.
then we come to the formal teaching of it. Then
Right.
the other tools, practical tools, will be having like timetables.
Mhm,
I've seen with the little ones,
mhm,
even at school, it's easier
mhm,
to have timetables that have pictures.
mhm,
So if, for example, it's time for play, you can
mhm,
have from this time to that time a picture
mhm,
of somebody playing.
mhm,
Then it's easy even for your
mm,
3-year-old, 4-year-old to look up and say, it's now time for this. And they will
mhm,
know, oh, okay, so now it's time to go out and play or
mhm,
to take a nap. Then let
mhm.
there be that picture. You can start as easy as that.
Right.
Obviously, as they get a bit older,
Mhm.
you can now incorporate them into making of that schedule, so
Right.
that at least you're saying, okay, let's see, you're coming from home at what time? At 4.
Mhm.
What's the first thing you need to do? Okay, I'd rather take a snack first, and then
Right.
after that you have 30 minutes of
Mhm.
playtime. Or do I go and play first and then I come and do my homework?
Mhm.
And I think that's something I would say from the age of 8 onwards,
Mhm.
that you can sit and have a conversation with your child about, so
Right.
that when you put it out, it is
Mhm.
not mom's timetable or
Mm.
dad's timetable. It's a
Right.
timetable that together
Mm.
as a family or
Mm.
that unit
Mm.
we've come up with. So
Right.
that would help.
Mm.
In cases where children have access to the gadgets,
Mhm.
that can also help with that scheduling. I think that would also be
Mhm.
useful. because we're at a technological world, really, that's a sphere we are in. So also looking for those things that would help. I've recommended at times parents to use timers, because for younger children to understand what 5 minutes is, it's very difficult. I mean, that is you acquire over time. But if you bought something like a beautiful, fanciful timer, and you say, okay, I'm tipping over this sand timer, by the time the sand runs down, you should have finished doing this,
One
and then after that,
activity.
the next one, we flip it again, you have time to do that. So when you do that, then it's easy now to incorporate all those different activities and help them with the balance.
Right.
The other thing that I also strongly believe in is developing do-it-yourself habits early enough.
Right.
Because when they get to a point where they have so many things to balance, then they already can do the basics. Can I tie my shoes, make my bed quickly, pack my snack for break, those sort of things. Then it's not eating into the time for other activities.
Right, right. And you've touched on two things that I feel very strongly about. And I think I may have mentioned it the last time we spoke, and that's fun learning. When you're talking about like picture, timetables with pictures on them, that's a fun way to communicate a message. That's a more memorable way to speak to children. And that brings me to my next question. What's the place for fun in this conversation we're having, in developing talent, in finding balance? What's the place for enjoyment in all of that for a child?
Learning for me is fun. As it could just be that I'm an educator, but that's a very good question of how do I translate that enjoyment to the children I'm learning or to my own children. And I think one thing, again, I'll go back to what I said, is children catch. If as a parent you're going to approach any chore in the house or any, let's say, study time, like military, the fact that, okay, it's time now, you need to do this, this is time to do this, no more playtime, now sit down. So a child will interpret, oh, okay, so playtime is fun, but now it's time for seriousness and strictness. But I think if, again, you interject the day-to-day experiences into learning, if you're learning about fractions, is there a way you can cut up a pizza and talk about fractions as you're working on it? Then you say, okay, fine, let's first, work on this pizza, get our quarters. Now can you go and do your math?
Right.
In the same way, envision this, giving them images and activities that are fun, yet they are related to the subject that you're learning. Family trips are very crucial, because if you're on a family trip, are you looking out? Can you look out for opportunities of learning? So that at least if they had learned about, let's say, Mombasa for Jesus, and you're down at the coast and you visit for Jesus, it would be a time to discuss those things. So it removes the formality and the sort of the strict structure from learning to them understanding that learning is an everyday affair. The other thing I would say is let them see you enjoying to learn. Because I think, again, what to avoid as maybe I'm doing some work and I've shut myself in the study room. It's time for mommy now and daddy. I don't want any disturbance, okay? So let me go. I've gone into my study room to do some very serious work. But do they see you working and enjoying what you do, so that we are not hiding that place of the learning journey that we are going through in life? Because even for us, it's a learning journey. So we are not closing it out and then just showing them the rest of the life that has got nothing to do with learning. And I think also just owning up and saying something like, oh, when I was young, I didn't like this subject, but this is what I did to make it fun. Sharing out of your experiences will also help them understand it's normal. Not every child will like all the subjects. We can't, there's no way that can happen. But I think it's just helping them to understand generally learning is fun and it's lifelong. It's a lifelong process. Yes.
Oh, and one other thing that I find very, very important is parents modeling behavior. As you've said, things are caught more than they're taught with children. And you're talking about parents showing themselves learning. Sometimes we take all the fun out of learning and we make it to be this boring chore, and no one wants a boring chore.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other thing you touched on is just the the importance of using every opportunity as a teachable moment, and how um, the things we interact with every day, the things we see, the things around us, if we incorporate that into the learning process, then those lessons are consolidated, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
True.
yeah.
True.
I think that's really important to know that we're not only ever learning when we are holding a book,
Exactly.
right? And to just use everything around us for a richer educational experience.
Exactly. And then something else comes to mind, Charlotte,
Mm.
is are you learning from your child?
Mm.
Because as education continues to morph and the curriculum changes, there are things that our children are learning now that we don't know about.
Right.
So
Right.
are you giving, is it possible to give your child an opportunity of, say, tell me what you learned today in history? They'll tell you about Queen Elizabeth. I never learned about Queen Elizabeth in primary,
school,
but here they're
no.
learning about Queen Elizabeth, and I can stand to learn. And once they realize, oh my, even mom, dad they're interested in what I'm learning, and not only that, they can be able to say, okay, that's something new, that's quite fascinating. Can we look it up? Can we research a little bit more about that?
Right.
And then you can also, that would help. The other thing is to understand, we go back to what we said about interest and just the uniqueness in every child. Some children would rather learn by watching. Others would rather learn by listening. Others would prefer to learn by doing. So if that's a child who learns maybe best by listening, then is there music that can go along with that? Is there a song that you can compose that can talk about the same story they were learning in school, or the
Right.
times tables? I mean, they're all sort of very beautiful things, fun things. Can we make our timetables be in form of a song?
Right.
And that then when I recite, I don't have to cram it, but as I sing along, I can remember. So looking at it and saying, what is the best way for this particular child to learn?
Oh, and that to me sounds like it's more about the importance of being switched on, fully switched on when it comes to your child, because you need to be aware of their individuality. You could have three children and each one of them learns differently.
Exactly.
So I think that's a call to parents, a call to action even. Can you be really, really aware of your child? Be aware of their needs as far as learning is concerned. And back to our conversation
Yes.
on talent, your kids will be gifted differently. It's very rare. I consider it a rarity where you have like a family like the Jacksons, where everybody is a singer.
True.
A lot of the times for most of us, and I heard you talking with my manager earlier about the different career paths that you and your sister have taken. I think
Yes.
that's more the norm,
Yes.
where everybody is gifted totally differently from the other, and it's important for the parent to be aware on to be aware how to handle each child according to their needs. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, because you're right, every child is unique, and every child should be unique, just like all of us should be unique and celebrate our uniqueness. But I think after that, then we see how they complement each other. On that one, what I would say is, one, if you're a parent of more than you're parenting more than one child, is to be extremely careful not to lift up one talent over the other.
Oh, right.
Because in your mind you might think singing is better than acting, for example. And so you push every child. So when that particular child who sings is singing, you're quite excited. But when this child is learning their lines, of the script that they have to perform tomorrow, you're not as excited.
Right.
That then communicates that one is better than the other, which is honestly not right. So the best thing would be to ensure that every talent in that house, or every skill, or every ability, academic or otherwise, is celebrated with equal measure. And every effort, as we said, and achievement is also celebrated.
Right.
And I think it's okay. I've seen children are very in tune with such things. They can easily tell you, Miss Wahinya, if you want to learn a new song, please go to Charlotte. If you want to learn math, please talk to John. They also know within themselves who is better at one thing and who is better in another thing.
Right.
So, and then I would say you have to really try hard, is what you have said. You have to be in tune with the children, but you also have to try extremely hard to find that something that is unique of every child. Even that child who is laid back, ensure as much as it depends on you that you're able to find something that gives him or her that credibility, even in the family setup. Yes.
Oh, and speaking of uniqueness, I don't know if all gifts are created equal. Some people are talented in the kind of way that puts them on platforms and gets them a lot of attention. And, we tend to celebrate those gifts more. And there's what I would say quiet gifts, people who take the behind the scenes kind of approach. And how do you help children appreciate their own uniqueness? Because not all of us are in front of the camera people. Some of us are going to be behind it, even in life. So how do you help your kids appreciate their own giftings just the way they are without elevating one above the other?
Very good question indeed. And I would say is helping them to understand how they all fit together. And I like the example that you've given. Again, let's look at even at a child who is very good in academics, who is a scholar in the making, a researcher even, who is doing extremely well in that area of field. They need somebody else to support them. They cannot be the people who are doing the data analysis. They might not be the ones who are going to make a pitch somewhere. So you in a team, I think it's understanding that in every team, everybody contributes differently. And that's where collaborative methods of teaching are important. Because when you start teaching children in groups early enough, they understand that on this particular task, you're going to be the scribe, I'm going to present, I'll be the one getting the ideas and putting them together. They start learning that everybody has something to bring on the table. And then, but when we step out as a group. It's a group effort. So as a parent also, even in those dynamics of family, how about you do, again, participate in activities that are family oriented, that as a family, this is what we're going to do. Maybe we're going out for a community outreach. What are you bringing on the table, Charlotte? Maybe I'll sort out my clothes. That's what I'll bring. What are you going to do? I'm going to make a list of the things we need to buy. What is mommy going to do? This is what is dad going to do? This is what dad is going to do. So they start to understand, even without it being a competitive platform, that everything that somebody is doing is important. Now, when it comes to that time when they're quite specializing in their areas of gifting, then they'll also have that appreciation of knowing, look, yes, I can speak very well, but somebody has to write my script for me. And the fact that somebody has written a script and I'm speaking, it doesn't make this person's role any lesser.
Any less true.
And I think it's celebrating that. And you're right, as in every setup, you find that child who can easily be forgotten. Because they are quiet. They're not quite able to push for their ideas. They'll not jostle for their space. They're happy to let everybody go ahead of them. Again, dependent on personalities. It could be personalities mainly, and sometimes it could also be nurturing. So in such a case, as the adult in that place, whether a parent or an educator, I believe it's my responsibility to call that child out, to give them that space to shine. Because children are also very astute. Once they see somebody shining, they'll give them, it's the sort of the unrespect from that. Oh, did you hear how she sang? Did you see how she presented that? Did you see how he made that goal? He shot that ball. Then they unrespect from their peers.
And how do you encourage that child with the quiet gift to come forth with what they have to offer? Because I also know at that age, it's very easy to lock kids in, for even children to lock themselves in patterns of behavior. There's one who's more outspoken, there's one who expresses themselves better. So that one is likely to take that role, and then the other kids are likely to fall back even within families. How do you encourage the quiet one, the reserved one, to come out with their gifts and to make their contribution?
Well, very, very good question. And I can speak from experience because I've seen it. It's typical in every class setup that you'll have that one child, like I said, who can easily get forgotten and is actually happy not to be noticed. They are looking for that corner of, back seat, and I don't want anybody to see me. So what I've found works, I'll talk as an educator, then we can transfer the same to parents. What I've found works, such a child would do better one-on-one. And that's why you have that private chat. Because maybe as an educator, I've noticed, say, child X is very good in, let me give another example of their times tables, for example. But if I tell them to go to the front of the class and maybe demonstrate how they work it out, they may hesitate. They will not volunteer. So if I call that child aside before and say, oh, tomorrow there's something I need you to help me with. Okay, so we're going to be working on the 5 times tables. I'll be with you. I'm going to do the first 5. I want you to carry on and do the next 5. Can you do that for me? Fine. So once a child feels I'm needed and have something to contribute, but more so there's somebody standing by my side cheering me on, most children will step out. But if you call that child out publicly, they'll shy off. In a home setup, I would say the same. Why don't you call that your son or daughter aside and say, you know what, I love the way you make cookies. You know, you're very good at baking. So what we're going on Saturday, I want us to, we're going to just have some time together. Let's bake these cookies and let's go and present them to a particular, or let's sell them. Maybe it's a function that sales are allowed. And you stand by that child, they make their money or they earn from that and they learn, oh, okay, you mean I'm really, really good at this. And that's all that children need. I look at children as that very young plant that just need nurturing, a bit of water, a bit of sunlight, and for sure it will grow. If the conditions of growth for a plant are that are required are present, then growth is inevitable. It's inevitable. So again, that's why I'm saying it's our responsibilities as adults to provide those conditions and to seek out such a child. Yes.
And I love that because it's all about conscious parenting.
Exactly.
That's a parent who's fully present and very aware of each of their children, or of each child within the home and the individual needs of that child. And how about the really, really gifted child? And I'll admit, I was one of those in front children, and my sister is the exact opposite, really quiet, still is.
Okay.
Really good at stuff that requires organization. Mimi, I'll be there all over. And I won't plan a thing, but I'll show up and it'll get done. My sister is the exact opposite. And I know certain personalities can overshadow others. So, what do you say to that parent who has one very outspoken, very gregarious child and another very laid back one? Does the outspoken one, like me, need to be toned down? Like, how does that balance work?
I would say the same way that we've spoken about that one-on-one time with this child who is a bit less outspoken, and then here we have a child who is more outspoken. As a family, it's good to set expectations and say, right, when we are at the dinner table, everybody has to have a chance to speak. So how was your day? How was your day? So, and now that's when you institute listening skills, because sometimes children who are a bit more outgoing, then they have a lot to say, but it's just slowing them down, just slowing and understanding you need to take your turn. It's now your sister who is talking, it's her platform. We are all listening. We go back to modeling, that even parents, you're modeling. I'm just thinking of a child maybe who stutters, and as a parent, you have to be so patient, or as a family, to ensure that you can listen to this child through their stuttering as they give a short story, as opposed to that one who has all their thoughts well together, very coherent. So it's slowing them down and understanding in this family, everybody has a space. And then I think also the outspoken child on those one-on-one conversations, I think I really like the way you do this. However, it would also be good if you give your brother a chance. I think he's also really, really good at making cars. Do you think you want to learn from making cars and celebrating and saying, we all need to learn from this? So let him tell us, how do you do it? And then letting this other one understand we are all listening now. We are not interjecting, we are not interrupting, we are not stealing the show. Let's listen to this one.
Because we are out to raise well-adapted children, well-adjusted children, you you don't want one who wants to monopolize the spotlight, who wants attention all the time. It's important to teach them without breaking their spirit, how
Exactly.
to give others a chance, because that's how the world works. There is no one place where one person gets to monopolize. Is there? I don't think
There
such
shouldn't
a
be, for
space
sure.
exists. Yeah.
Mm.
So children need to be mindful to make room for others by pacing themselves sometimes. And there's one more thing I really wanted us to give us insight on, and that's monetizing talent. How are you having that conversation with your braisters and their parents, even? How are you helping steer them towards a future where they can sell those gifts if they're diligent enough with them, if they work hard enough at becoming good enough at whatever it is they're good at? There could be prospects, doors could open for them in that way. What's your take on that? How do you handle it at Brayside?
All right, that's a topic that I'm very passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly say that we've not had a financial literacy program
Mm-hmm.
formalized in the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that I've done is now I'm in that process of coming up
Mm-hmm.
with that curriculum because
Right.
of exactly what one of them being,
Mm.
one of motivation being what you're speaking about,
Mm-hmm.
letting our children know
Mm.
that they can monetize what they have early
Mm.
enough.
Mm.
So for me, what I'm thinking is the starting point is first to understand the value of money
Mm.
and and the
Mm.
respect for money,
Right.
because it's one
Right.
thing to monetize and another one not to know what to do with that
Mm.
monetization. And
Mm.
then the other thing, we also go back to the talents and helping them to understand, if this
Mm-hmm.
is my career, this is my talent.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I'm very good in programming, in
Mm-hmm.
computing and programming.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the opportunities that are there? We are
Right.
playing games. You can I
Mm-hmm.
make a game that I can market online, or
Mm-hmm.
that can solve a particular problem, or
Mm.
that can teach a particular concept. So
Mm.
I think more in those lines. And
Mm.
even things like we've talked about writing, we are
Mm-hmm.
really, really pushing
Mm.
the aspect of publishing in our
Mm-hmm.
schools, getting
Mm.
our children young authors that are being published.
Mm-hmm.
And currently I would humbly say that we have our youngest author that we've published is 8 years old,
Mm-hmm.
who published a book with the system.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have quite a number of others that are coming up. So
Mm-hmm.
we've been deliberate to have theme weeks where
Mm-hmm.
we are teaching about writing, creative
Mm-hmm.
writing, and then
Right.
also working with partners, because we cannot work alone.
Mm.
Working with partners like yourself, for example, who
Mm-hmm.
you've already published a book,
Mm-hmm.
come and have a chat with our students, interested, enthusiastic writers, and
Right.
show them how that journey is. When
Mm.
it comes to sporting, we are taking advantage of, like, now we are in a World Cup season,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very keen to see
Mm-hmm.
where your skills can
Mm.
take you, and
Mm.
what is it that you need to do. So we are
Right.
having a mock World Cup
Mm-hmm.
in school
Oh,
the last week of term. So every
that
class
is so
has a
cool.
team,
Mm.
and we are all going to be competing. And in
Mm-hmm.
so doing, we are showing them, look how the things you're doing now
Mm-hmm.
can translate
Mm.
into other things
Mm.
currently or also in future.
Right.
But it's teaching them that there's nothing.
Mm.
It's more so, what do I have in my hands?
Mm-hmm.
What rod do I have in my hands that can
Mm.
make a difference?
Mm.
And what do I do with that rod? So
Mm.
it's equipping them with those skills.
Oh, fantastic. That
Mm,
is great.
mm.
I was invited to one of those sports days, and then I think it got cancelled because the
Yes,
weather was
yes,
bad.
unfortunately.
And then there was a bit of a reaction. Someone walked in very upset
Mm.
that we didn't show up. We were like, we didn't cancel it.
Very true.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really great. And there's one more thing I would like us to talk about, and that's values, and where values intersect with talent and the gifts of a child. And this is more so towards the parents. How does that conversation unfold? What's the place for, this is what we stand for as a family, this is what informs what we prioritize? Is there a room for having the conversation on our gifts and talents?
Quite a big room, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, for values,
Mm.
because I look at values like the compass of life, a life
Mm-hmm.
compass,
Mm.
in the sense that which direction will I take?
Mm.
Because yes, a child will be successful academically, a
Mm-hmm.
child will be successful in their skill and talent
Mm-hmm.
area,
Mm-hmm.
but what is it that will keep them grounded
Mm.
when they have to make those decisions,
Right.
life choices? Because you and I know
Mm.
that there are choices to be made every step of the way. So
Mm.
what will help them is
Mm-hmm.
back to those values.
Right.
What are the family values that we stand for? When they come to a crossroad and they have to choose which path to take, they'll go back to the value system. When it is that they'll be caught in a situation where a bit of compromise is required, what will stop that child is the values they have. So I can't possibly overemphasize the place of values in any child's life, leave
Right.
alone that child who is talented. Because a talented child means really will be very much exposed to the world, the wider world, so to speak. Can they handle that? Can they handle the fame? Can they
Right.
handle the money? Can they handle the prestige that comes with it, the power that comes with it? What will keep them as anchored is those values. So
Right.
extremely important to ensure that values are instilled.
Right. And in my book, When Things Change, I talk about that. The character in the book is called Amari. He's a star basketballer. He's the best at his school at it. And that has earned him a place among his peers. And that has translated into a misplaced sense of importance at home. He's a little bratty, he is rude, he's very entitled, and the conversation, the entire conversation is his parents trying to remind him, hey, we don't act like that here. Hey, even the things you have, the basketball gear you have, everything you've needed that we've provided, that's a privilege, you know? And I think it's really important for parents to take that approach, have that frame that's determined by the values you uphold as a family, and then let that inform everything else, including the child's talent. Because, as you've said, a gifted athlete will might end up living a certain kind of lifestyle. There could be a lot of money, and if the person within is not well formed enough, that could end up being to their undoing.
Very true.
Yeah,
Yeah, very true.
yeah.
Indeed, well put. Yes.
And I've actually watched an interview by LeBron James, the greatest basketballer of all time, it's said. And he has a son who's super talented. And from the interview I watched, whoever was talking was implying that that child could be another level of basketball playing that we haven't seen yet. Like, if you think his dad is amazing, now wait and see what the boy will do. And when LeBron is interviewed about his child, he spoke about what a responsible, kind individual the son is. And I was really
Interesting.
impressed. Yeah. That it gave me a sense that um, it's important to predicate talent and gifts and you know all the benefits that come from them on a well-formed personality and character. Yeah.
That's true.
Mm.
Yes, and I think the way to summarize it is to say, really, before the star, there's the person. And so it's a person that we have to work on first.
True.
And that person can have the capacity
True.
to carry whatever life brings along the way.
And
Yes.
what's the danger of fanning a flame, encouraging the talent, giving the child everything they need to be great, and them going on to do it and compromising who they are as a person?
It would be extremely sad because, as you say, to be a talent that is wasted. And in every talent development, my thinking is this talent should be of good influence to another person. It should be perpetuated. So you see, when that happens and it's curtailed just because of choices of life and lack of values, then it means many other children or many other people who could have benefited in the world have lost out. There will be missed opportunities for others. And that really is something else very important to highlight for children to understand. It's not just for them or about them. We are looking at a tomorrow and a generation that is going to come. So what role is what you're doing going to play in the role of the next generation?
Wow.
Very important.
That's fantastic. And I also think it's quite important to live by this principle that to whom much is given, much is required. You
Yes.
know, you have a child who's a standout talent in any way. I think it's really, really important to emphasize, like, hey, it's not just for you. There's such a thing as service to humanity. There's such a thing as being a stand-up individual who's of use to the people around them, you know. Yeah, and
True.
in that way we end up with children who are not just gifted, but they're also holistic in the sense that they add value everywhere they go. And I think that would be the dream for every parent, isn't
Very,
it?
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Miss Wahinya, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I'm sure parents are gonna be helped. I'm sure um, any home where they're having a bit of trouble striking that balance, they're gonna find this conversation really, really useful.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Charlotte, for having me. It's
Mm.
been an absolute pleasure to
Mm-hmm.
just speak about students and how we can help them strike that balance. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a conversation whose time has come,
Mm-hmm.
so it's very, very timely, and I'm grateful that I could be part of this journey.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
having me.
Asante sana for
Mm.
coming through.